So we're all stuck inside. Now imagine that you worked for a good year and a half on creating the ultimate business. And then during that, a city tries to take you and 200 of your close friends, all of your housing away, and you have to step up to the plate and go completely out of your comfort zone and try to solve that problem. And you do. And then year and a half later, you're able to launch your business, but just so happens the Monday that you're launching your business, the government says everyone shelter in place, and your business just happens to be a performance business needing crowds. So you just worked a year and a half for nothing. And that's the conversation that I'm having today. This is my buddy Andrew, and he's an amazing musician, a circus performer, and just a great person. This is him telling the story of all the things he's been through, and he's still crushing it, still to this day. There are a lot of people in this world that are constantly dealing with change and constantly adapting, and they're constantly positive about it. This is their comfort zone. This is what they know how to do. And I'm going to share a bunch of conversations with people that help people tell that story. So go ahead and follow Total BS Wellness. You can go to totalbswellness.com. You can follow me on Instagram. You can join the Platinum Club, which is a social media platform that I sort of built out so we don't have to deal with all of the doom and gloom and negativity that's going on, because sometimes times of change require a little bit of discomfort, and it hurts a little. So enjoy the pain. This is Total BS Wellness, because if you don't show up and practice, it's all BS anyway. All right, so I hope this works out. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, perfect. All right, Andrew.
Matt.
It's good to see you, man. How's it been going through this whole thing?
Whew, it's been intense, man. My entire industry vanished overnight. I lost all my work, and and it looks like my industry is not going to return until large public gatherings are okay again. So, so there's been a lot of confusion and uncertainty as to what to be doing with myself right now.
Okay, so all right, let's just talk about that. Let's get right to it.
Right.
How much time you have?
All the damn time in the world.
Okay. You are a performer, but you do you do circus stuff, and you also do Jedi youth training, like stuff like that.
Yep.
And so you went through a big ordeal of trying to preserve this giant art space that you live in, which is called the Vulcan Gallery.
Yeah.
And that's a still going process, trying to keep that.
Still going process. Yeah. And for clarity's sake, for those listening, the Vulcan is a live work loft in East Oakland that houses about 200 artists. It's a very large artist community. So just went through that also this past year. So last year's been a hell of a time, I tell you what.
Yeah. So then you did all that, and next thing you know, you're like, all right, cool, I'm launching my business. And I actually helped with about 2% of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you woke up one day and your industry was, after working for when were you supposed to launch your site? You were supposed to.
Yeah. So for my children's entertainment business, I've been working for the last 18 months on building not only a new website, but a custom backend database to handle all of my email automation and billing and invoicing and scheduling, basically all of my business ops in one cloud-based system. And I designed a bunch of custom processes and such. And yeah, so it took a year and a half to get that going, with a break of several months to go all hands on deck to keep my warehouse intact and livable. And all the new infrastructure launched last week to zero fanfare. One client inquired about an event in like August, but we still don't even know whether or not there's going to be an events industry in August. So,
right.
So after that, I've been sitting with what I think is probably just some burnout from doing a really long, tedious project that involves lots of sitting in front of a computer and copywriting and a lot of the stuff that is not exciting about being a professional action hero. And just wondering, okay, like this was supposed to be like this crowning achievement, this big moment that's going to launch, and then we're going to go right out and start going after new clients and a new income bracket and new markets. And there's just, there's a little bit I technically could be doing, but in the current climate, after having spent as much time and energy as I have on this, there's also a part of me that's experiencing a case of the fuck it's. And I'm just like, what for right now? Like, why don't I just chill and train? Maybe that's sufficient for now.
I think more people need to hear about what happened with the Vulcan thing, because a lot of people don't understand how important the Vulcan is to just kind of art, especially art in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. And the Vulcan represented live workspaces. Like, I'm in a live workspace. I've been in live workspaces for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's a true live workspace. It's not one of those places. I remember a lot of the live workspaces that I've even helped build out soon become artist lofts, which are charged a major premium, and it's more for like the tech or the kind of home base.
I've been to some of those places in Soma.
They're really nice.
The short version on the Vulcan is the oldest and largest live work loft space in the city of Oakland, which has over 100 such spaces. As I mentioned, it houses about 200 artists. And we learned about probably actually a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that the owner of the Vulcan, a multimillionaire real estate developer who helped our current mayor get elected, among other things, was trying to cash in on the current Bay Area housing market by selling our building. For a very large sum of money. And there's a group in town called Safer DIY Spaces that arose after the Ghost Ship fire to help preserve warehouse spaces that immediately sounded the alarm when they found out about this sale, because our building is a converted steel foundry built I think in the 1950s. And the current landlord's relationship with the city has led to him receiving a number of special protections and a lack of oversight or accountability on making improvements to the building necessary to bring it up to code. Okay. And if the building were to be sold, so said our folks at Safer DIY Spaces, the expense of making all of these necessary improvements that had been waived for him basically for the last decade would all have to be done by the new owner. And with the scrutiny that the city is now placing on live workspaces after the Ghost Ship fire, there would be no special protections for a new owner. So the problem with this was that under Oakland city law, 70% of capital improvements to a building for things like bringing it up to code, fire safety, et cetera, can legally be passed on to the residents in the form of a rent increase. And given the amount of improvements that would be needed to bring this building up to full code, the building covers an entire city block. the estimates from Safer DIY Spaces is that our rent here would have increased somewhere between 200 and 300%, which would have pretty much priced out most of the artists, most of whom are low income that live here. The Vulcan has been a cornerstone of the Bay Area arts community for a long time. Like if you ask anybody in the Bay Area art scene if they've heard of the Vulcan, they have. Either they've lived there, they know someone who's lived there, they've been to an event there. Yeah, it's kind of been the mothership for a long time. So the folks at Safer DIY Spaces advised us that we should petition the city for rent control for the building, which would keep our rents stable and keep us from being priced out if the building was in fact sold. It would also stall the sale of the building and give us and Safer DIY Spaces time to find an affordable housing developer who might be willing to use public subsidies to purchase the building. So we were put in touch with some local tenants' rights attorneys who helped us form a tenants union, which allows us to be legally represented by a single person rather than having to all represent ourselves. And then we learned that in order to cover all the legal fees for a case of this magnitude to the city, which the city has never seen before, we were going to need to raise about $50,000 over the course of, we had basically had 2 months to raise $50,000. And it looked like there wasn't going to be anybody who was about to step up to do it. So I stepped up and organized a team of folks here at the Vulcan with expertise in everything from graphic design to video editing to audio engineering, web design, even some folks who had experience in policy work. And we organized in 2 weeks a crowdfunding campaign that we then launched, which did successfully raise slightly over $50,000 for our legal fees in the course of a month. We successfully petitioned the city for rent control, halted any possible sale of the building, and now we are still in court. Our legal battle has now gone on for over a year. The COVID-19 situation seems to have delayed a lot of proceedings, but and it still remains kind of uncertain whether or not we will be granted rent control. But what did happen in the interim, which we didn't expect, was that while we were in the period where we had bought ourselves time, the governor of California instituted a statewide rent control initiative that went into place in January. Okay. So the statewide rent control initiative is not as good as the Oakland City rent control policy, but it's better than nothing. So we're still gunning for the Oakland City rent control if we can get it, because the Oakland City rent control law states that your rent can only be raised by basically inflation every year, whereas California's state law now says inflation plus 5%. And for those of us living, on limited incomes, doing creative work, et cetera, which is, oftentimes non-lucrative, that 5% actually makes quite a big difference if you apply it every year over the course of many years. So It was a huge community organizing effort. We had hundreds of people donate to our campaign. We got press coverage in the East Bay Express and Vice and, TV news stations and the whole deal. We raised a really big stink about it. And we even got some attention at the city level, which is great. So we also know that the city is watching our case very closely, because the Oakland City Council has now come under pretty intense scrutiny for how they handle matters relating to affordable housing and housing access, gentrification, displacement, especially for low-income folks. So that's been really cool to see that a bunch of radical creatives in a warehouse could basically out of thin air organize and make something like this happen.
Yeah.
using, I think the cool part, using a lot of the creative skills, assets, and resources that we have available for our other stuff to do this campaign. Like we had beautiful video, we had beautiful graphic design, we had a social media pro running our GoFundMe campaign and our Facebook campaign and all that. So it was really cool to see everyone rally and bring their creative skills together to make this thing happen.
So like when I would tour, I would always tell people like, no one goes to your city because of the bank. But we as artists, we need those bankers to hopefully help us know how to manage our money, right? Because you and I have both been into a thing where we're both pretty into the business of all this.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of times we don't take into consideration a lot of those corporate people. Like I know a lot of people that have done fitness centers. I know a lot of people that have done other creative projects. But they're coming from, they're really good at marketing. Like they came from the corporate world. So they have that training of good marketing. They have that 6-figure account that, savings and investments and all this other stuff. And I don't think a lot of people really see that side of it. And then when there's a whole group of people that literally you guys have trained from childhood, you're a musician, you're a theater guy, you're a performer. Like you're not like coming here to work at Oracle and then realizing that that's not the life for you. And then you're going off into performing. Like there's just a lot of performers in this area. And that's a big part of why the Bay Area, Austin, New York, it's why those towns are cool.
Yeah.
I think it's great that you got some help.
Absolutely.
Like, all those industries. I mean, it's all about creative people having creative solutions. I mean, that's what tech is people trying to get really creative with code. All right. So you went through burnout because it does compile. You were in a legal battle, stepping way out of your comfort zone because all you wanted to do was rock and then jump around like a crazy person. Yet you had to be in a computer. Yeah.
Yep.
And then you had to launch your site on top of that.
Yep.
And then when you launch your site, all of the potential work for the short but long future, which is many, many, many months, is gone.
Yeah.
So you got a good case of the fuckets.
Yep.
All right. And so what are you fucking?
The first thing for me is just sort of reorienting my mindset a little bit to focus a little bit more on being and a little bit less on doing.
Okay.
Like you, I am on most of the time, and I love to achieve stuff. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I like the rush of checking stuff off the list and setting big goals and just knocking them down one at a time. And this has always been the way I am. This is probably always the way I will be. And I've been sort of wondering whether or not there will ever be another time in my life where I'm forced by circumstance basically to not work.
Okay. What are the challenges? What are the challenges in this? You're being forced to not work, but what is the thing that you are having to, because this is something that I dealt with, is there's always this thing in the back of my head that was like, you have to keep doing blah, blah, blah. And yeah, what is that thing in the back of your head?
I mean, most of the super type A people I know experience some degree of anxiety or some level of self-imposed internal pressure.
Okay.
Around doing and I think I think for me at least there's a fear response that's tied to that I have weathered so many ups and downs of being a self-employed creative for my entire adult life, that I am well aware my position economically is tenuous if I don't keep consistent pressure applied, not only on the creative front, but even more so on the business front. I see a lot of people fail miserably when they don't keep consistent pressure on the business front. And I resolved many years ago to never be that guy.
Okay.
And it sounds like perhaps you have also resolved to not be that guy, that because not just because you have to do some bullshit that is not martial arts in order to keep doing martial arts does not mean it is not worth continuing to be a professional martial artist.
Right.
You just have to suck it up and do the thing. So I for many years, having now weathered some of these ups and downs, have developed some degree of fear and internal pressure as a result, that if I don't keep going, that if I don't apply consistent pressure to my business every day, that things will fall apart. And one of the inherent contradictions of this situation, as I have been forced to pause and look back on what I have built, how I have managed my money, how I have managed my time, my expenses, my lifestyle, has forced me to reckon with the fact that at least for the next several months, I am okay. And I actually don't have to be working hard right now. And yet I'm so used to having this little voice in the back of my head that's like, nope, gotta wake up early, gotta meditate, train, get on the computer and start making shit happen. That I think there's a lot of, I think the central challenge right now is one of just mindfulness around the fact that that voice is there, that it has been cultivated and fed for a valid reason that does not exist right now. And that if I allow myself to operate from that place, I'm not actually functioning with a broad enough view of my current situation. And so I don't necessarily want to kill that voice, because it serves a utility when things are up and running. And I think when the market is about to return to normal, it will make more sense to engage with that. But for the moment, there's a lot of time and energy that I've invested in meditating and moving slowly enough through the world, deliberately enough through the world, that I am able to maintain a higher level of self-awareness, such that I can notice when I hear that little voice in the back of my head being like, but you should really be doing shit right now. And have the presence to be like, I see you. I know why you exist. It's not bad that you're there, but you really need to calm the fuck down right now.
Yeah.
You're really not, you are coming from a different point in time than I am right now. And so like hang out, but hang out on that shelf back there. And I will let you know when it is time to come out again. So that, I think, is sort of the central challenge that this whole system this whole situation has brought upon me. And then that brings the attendant challenge of just like, I'm used to going on all fronts all the time and operating at a relatively quick pace, lots of balls in the air, lots of code switching. And so I also just have I feel some internal momentum, just like I'm used to being in motion. And so I feel like there's also some reorientation I'm experiencing around just watching my gears kind of grind down more slowly as this situation forces me to. And being like, okay, what else do I do with my time? Or it's not that I don't have things to do with my time that that would feel good right now. Like I read, I meditate, I train, but now I have the opportunity to shift the percentages of those things, the amount of time each of those things takes up in my day. And so that's also been an interesting challenge, just figuring out how do I fill my time right now? Like I've come to a place where I feel okay, at least for the next several weeks, taking a break and just being like, you just did a whole bunch of shit. Good job, son. You deserve a vacation. You haven't had one in years, where you weren't, doing gigs or off training somewhere or whatever. So like, take an actual fucking vacation for once.
Yeah.
And figure out what that looks like for you, and then hopefully, building some practices and awareness for that, which when things do get back up and running, will be easier to return to when I do need to take downtime to rest and recharge. So those are some of those things.
It's since I've been doing what I do for so long. There is a momentum that's just hard to stop. It's like, I mean, my first Junior Olympics was, God, in 86 or something like that, or 85. I had to learn how to wake up and just kind of enjoy the morning as a skill. I didn't learn it as I just love to wake up and enjoy the morning. That was a skill that I cultivated. And now I don't necessarily, it's kind of like a roundhouse kick now. Now I don't really need to practice. I mean, I like to condition things and I still practice, but I practice more for effortlessness and stuff. Like you guys, you train with me, so you'll know, whenever I'm doing it, I'm always saying, I don't try. Like like my job right now is to try to cultivate effortlessness in this thing I've been doing forever. But the effort now comes down to, can you relax? Can you just wake up and know I don't have to do anything? So what do I want to do?
Yeah.
And I think the good realization for a lot of this should remind us that everything we do is something that we want to do. Like not many, I mean, we're self-employed, like everything we do. I mean, I have to remind people all the time that the answer to most things is I wanted to.
I made the decision to do that.
Yeah. That's it. I'm a relatively educated dude in a major city in a first world country. Like most things are my fault and I'm choosing to do them.
Yep.
And so now what? Now what do we do? Like, I think it's time to, lighten up a little bit and realize none of us are saving any lives, and let's just enjoy this time.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I'm in much a similar boat. I think I did my first paid gig when I was 8 or something like that. So and like you, I received a lot of intense training very early in life, that just got me in this mode of like, I wake up and I go hard on the thing that I do. What's been really interesting to me right now is that like I've grown used to applying a certain amount of internal pressure on myself to just keep my consistency and my momentum up.
Do the work. Yep.
And that's usually motivated by some kind of keep doing the work so that I can get to the next level. Keep doing the work so that I can pay rent. Keep doing the work so that I can, achieve a beneficial level of recognition in my field, whatever that might look like.
Yeah.
And and it's really weird to be watching that right now and just be like, watching it in a situation where it's not necessary, and being like, whenever that internal pressure turns into stress, that's something I chose too.
Yeah.
Like I chose to motivate myself to action in that way. So I think there's also a lot of interesting inquiry for me, and maybe for other folks who are used to maintaining some level of internal pressure, around not the what, but the how. How are you orienting yourself towards doing? How are you compelling yourself to action right now?
Yeah.
What is the tone of that? and and what are the implications if that tone is, if the tone of that is not, is not in alignment with where things are at right now. It's really, it's quite unusual. I really could never have anticipated that something like this would ever be forced upon us.
I've noticed that because I have a lot of friends that are like you,
Yeah.
and you're a circusy type, but you're also a really good musician, and you do like freak show stuff and
Yeah.
things like that. But so we're creatures of just, I mean, you live in a place with a studio and you're constantly working. And I mean, even though you've been off work, I mean, you just made an album, and I mean, you're always up to something. I mean, there's the type of person that is a creature of practice, you, me, like most of the people we know. And when this happened, we're all like, man, I gotta learn how to do nothing. And then there's this other group of people also that I serve that are getting into a practice. And so then when this happens, there's that moment of, first it's fear.
Yep.
And then the capitalist mind says we do have to keep doing something, right?
Yep.
So then people like look over at the piano in the corner and they're like, you know what? When this is over, I'm coming out a piano player and I'm learning Spanish. I mean, they have like this list of,
it's really, and I've also done that. I have a journal here where a week ago, I definitely wrote down a list of like, what could my quarantine level up projects be?
Yeah.
And, and I was in a very different phase of the process of coming to terms with the situation when I did that. And I was chatting with my girlfriend yesterday about this. I had just gotten off a conference call of a cohort of pro variety entertainers that I'm connected with. And there was like 35 people on this call. There was lots of like, rah, rah, sis boom ba, live stream, make new shows, write that book, do the thing. And I left this call feeling not inspired, but like just kind of, overwhelmed. And I was chatting with my girlfriend about it, and she was like, what you need to realize is that all of these people are starting to like get on that business development horse now and build the big things that they didn't have time to do otherwise. Now you've been doing that for the last 18 months nonstop amidst doing all these other projects. Like you're in a different place right now.
Yep.
You can actually relax and like give yourself some time to rest on the laurels of all of the doing, all of the achieving, all of the accomplishment, all of the revenue that you have created in that time, and like take some time for yourself to do whatever the fuck you want to do in whatever the fuck way you want to do it, and like, and have whatever amount of stuff that you do be totally sufficient. So,
and it doesn't have to be a reaction out of fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was, I mean, my plan for the past couple of years has been to move to doing things like this. And when all of this happened, I mean, I've had this talk with 50 people where it's like, where everyone is pivoting out of a place. I mean, as a fighter, like what we're always trying to do is, the second I get wrist control, now you're just fighting because, oh shit, they got my wrist, and oh, now they got my neck. And nature, then all martial arts is kind of nature. It's just climbing up you all the time. And the last thing you want to be doing is constantly putting out fires. I've even read business books where it's like, you don't want to be, if you're the type of business person or the type of executive that is always putting out fires and just reacting to things, then I don't think we understand how much sort of adrenaline based stimulus we need to fly into action. Even social media does that. It creates an adrenaline thing and it creates a reaction. So much of marketing is to create some sort of emotion, which is a opinion based reaction on you, whether it's fear or love or, tits or cool cars or whatever. It doesn't matter. I need you to have an emotion, which creates a reaction, which makes you move without thinking. And when you do have a little bit of prep behind you and you just have been working on this for a while, when something like this happens and everyone's just like, fuck it, I'm live streaming,
You know what I mean? And they're just like, they just start live streaming everything they're doing.
Yep.
What we realize is we're just reacting because that do in your head, the do in your head, right? He keeps
I'll remember that one.
Yeah, it keeps telling you that you have to, you if you're not generating some sort of thing right now,
Yep.
like you're not in trouble. Like everyone's, I mean, everyone's going through this. So, but I have noticed that it's people like you, people like me, we're just sit down and just regroup.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of other people that are just tacking on a list of things. And now, just like with a fitness thing or a diet change or any sort of reactionary based change in your life, it lasts a couple weeks and then you're done.
Yep.
And then you just go back to escapism. So I'm always interested in hearing how people are boating with their goals. And now we're like coming up on the third week.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's the relaxing coming? You getting better at it?
Slowly but surely. I mean, I think the sort of the arc of my situation has been that on week one, two things happened. One, all of my gigs for several months started melting down and disappearing. And there was this huge avalanche of clients inquiring about rescheduling. What do I do about my deposit? And all this stuff that just like a lot of edge cases that that some of the systems and automation I have in place to remove myself from the admin of my business were unprepared to handle because I did not design them with a global pandemic in mind. So I had to spend a lot of time with my assistant, just doing a lot of response to that. And then I also found out as things were melting down that my 95-year-old grandma, who has been in decline for the last year, had just been transferred to hospice care to die. And like not even a week later, I think it was like 5 or 6 days later, her entire facility went into lockdown to protect all of the old sick people there. And so I had to like grapple with the fact that I might not get to see my grandma again before she dies. And we're very close. She is cognitively about 30% there right now, but she's very musical. She still has the music. She still sings all the time, used to sing to us a lot as kids. And it's part of why my brother and I turned out to be professional musicians. So I was chatting with my brother and we were like, shit, what are we going to do? We really want to be able to connect with grandma, but it's very difficult to chat with her right now. Really all she's got left in any sort of, normal capacity is the music. How can we connect with her by music? Normally we go to her retirement community and we put on a show for her. But we couldn't do that this time. So we decided to make a jazz album of all of our grandma's favorite tracks. So we spent a week putting that together remotely, hired a out-of-work jazz trio, booked some recording studios in Seattle and the Bay Area, and got that all done. And that just finished up yesterday. So I gave myself a lot of stuff to do in week 2 after all the things I needed to do happened. So like really the last 24 hours feel like the time that I have started to decelerate a little bit. And the sort of the proactive mode that I shifted into a year and a half ago when I started building infrastructure to really scale up my business was based on a recognition that that behaving reactively around what I was doing was no longer serving me and was going to keep me playing in the middle ground of my market. Forever, unless I did something pretty significant and audacious and risky. So I'm unused to building larger, big things. I tend to operate much more on like 2 to 3 month timelines, like like being in a play would be a really good example of that. It's like for 2 or 3 months, this thing becomes an all-consuming part of your life. And I'm not able to do that anymore. So I sort of adopted a posture of, I'm going to wake up every morning and spend, I'll like do my morning practice, and then I'm going to spend 90 minutes doing whatever the tedious thing is that I need to do for my business to be proactive, which has looked like a lot of copywriting, a lot of strategic work, a lot of just setting up digital systems. Nothing fun, nothing interesting, nothing I'm excited about. And then just say, like, if I just do 90 minutes a day, most days of the week that I am not out doing gigs, that's enough.
Yeah.
So I think once I've gotten a little bit of downtime and had some opportunity to actually get bored, that is probably what I will return to.
Yeah.
It's just like, wake up, meditate, get my body loosened up a little bit, and then just like, where is it? Like, I have my little whiteboard with all my little tasks I need to do, and just like, spend an hour and a half on that. And if I don't feel like spending an hour and a half on it, that's fine. And just give myself permission to say, nah, that's cool. And then as long as I do that and do something to keep my body in shape for, just general conditioning and injury proofing for whenever I do go back on the gig, like whatever I do with the rest of my time, I think is going to be okay. And it seems, having chatted with my brother a little bit throughout doing the album process, it's increasingly seeming like the fun, exciting thing that I'd be stoked to do is level up my jazz improvisation chops a little bit, which is something that I don't have any commercial reason to do right now. I may not ever again have another commercial reason to do it. I think my years of playing music professionally are probably done. I hit it really hard in my teens and 20s, and I'm not trying to be a session guy anymore. I'm not trying to tour anymore. But I still love doing it. And it's just one of those things that has always been, like the last priority for that reason. So I really can't think of another time in my adult life where I'm going to have a few months to just like do this thing that I've always wanted to level up on that will, help me out. And I'm even suspecting that there may be the creation of, some sort of like musical side hustle as a result of this. Again, like not my main thing, but something that would be fun to do, something that would keep me connected to local musicians and would generate some revenue around my main business. And and I have zero expectations of what that could look like. And I'm just going to go for it. So we'll see. I mean, I think that the interesting thing that I'm waiting to observe more closely is if I do set some kind of intention that I'm going to be working on, like developing my jazz chops or something, in a situation where it's not relevant for me to engage with this sort of fear-based, I need to get my ass in gear and do the work, or else some negative consequence will befall me. How do I motivate myself to action? What is the source material that compels me into motion to do a thing? When and how does that arise? I don't know, because that's never been my default. So I think that'll be a really interesting discovery process. And I think, again, it's going to be about that, the challenge of maintaining self-awareness and mindfulness around how I am doing whatever it is that I am doing, so that I'm creating space for a different way of motivating myself to action to arise.
You know, they're in the performance world, there are just a lot of people that just, you know, we want to perform so we can be seen.
Hmm?
And then there's people that just like the craft of it. I find musicians oftentimes, because there's more of a barrier to entry to learn an instrument. I mean, yeah, being a dancer and stuff is a very, you know, it's so hard to do, and to do it
Yeah.
effectively with little or no one gives a shit about you when you're a dancer, you know.
Yeah.
Like I always want to ask anyone, name 3 dancers. You know what I mean? And unless you're a dancer, you know Baryshnikov. You know what I mean? You know Baryshnikov, and you can be like, well, is Michael Jackson a dancer? You know what I mean? Kind of thing. That being said, I was talking to a group of people, or a husband and wife yesterday, Matt and his wife Allison, and we're going to do one of these talks. But they were talking about the question of what you like. You may think blank, but really blank, right? Like about artists and people in these live work spaces.
Yeah.
Like, there is like things like the ghost ship. Like a lot of people aren't familiar with that, but it was a party gone horribly wrong, and a lot of people died because of a fire, and a lot of our friends died in that.
Yeah.
And that being said, a lot of people associate the live work place with crazy parties and stuff like that. And but it's just like with anything, if you go to a concert, you know, it's like a lot of times, yeah, the musicians are up there on stage, and there are a lot of people that are there to just party. And I don't know if people understand how hard you guys work, and like circus people are the hardest working people and again for nothing. And then what people don't understand is they bank a lot of their money on, you know, especially around here, it's like Google's having a Christmas party, and and it's circus themed, or, you know, they're constantly hiring, you know, people to sort of be in there and entertain folks. And there's such a gig culture out here. And when something like this happens, never underestimate the power of creative people, you know.
Yep.
They made this thing like, you know, Woodstock, and, you know, all these other intense moments in times of struggle. However, we can't get together. So I'm very interested, other than just the internet, like what are some other ways that we're going to be gathering? Like, have you seen anything going on now?
I mean, I've certainly seen a lot of internet-based stuff right now. You know,
Yeah.
like there's community organizing taking place at the Vulcan right now. I was on a Zoom call with 35 of my neighbors last night. So like that's happening. One of the things that I think is really cool right now that I've seen, which having done this album project, I've now participated in a little bit, is people making ensemble work remotely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what's in, like, conference calls are not interesting to me, but like I saw this incredible piece that was posted on a New York Times blog the other day of, I think it was Italian, either high school or university choral students singing an absolutely gorgeous a cappella cover of Crosby, Stills and Nash tune, one of the ones that has beautiful 3-part harmonies, except they had fleshed it out to be like 6-part, multiple octave doubling, all that stuff, and it was recorded by like over 30 singers, all in their homes, you know, like everybody's with their headphones or on their phone doing the thing. And somebody, I assume their director or whomever, had taken both the video and the audio recordings of these students and mixed it and made this beautiful track, you know, of 30 different voices singing that had not been in the same room. This beautiful video montage where you would see every time new vocalists would come in there, it started with one vocalist and then it expanded to 5, and then a whole new section of vocalists came in. And so you see these 10 people, And then there's beautiful video montage of all these people singing in their living rooms, these students singing in their living rooms, making really excellent music. And none of them had ever been in the same room to do it. It's totally possible to make interesting, to make interesting ensemble stuff on the internet if you reorient a little bit. I at least what I've been seeing right now is that most of the people in my community, in my industry, are either just now figuring out how to turn the thing they do into online content, or trying to figure out how to monetize their existing online content or presence. And some of them are still figuring out how to use the technology that allows them to produce online content in the first place. I have all these elders in my industry who've been, top working pros for decades in the live performance space, and have never once had to live stream a corporate magic show. I
could do corporate magic, like just like holding, like, hey, look, now it's a glass. Look, now it's a phone.
That was my floating coffee mug.
Yeah.
My floating coffee mug. Ooh, David Copperfield, come calling. This is your next big hit.
I worked at David Copperfield's show.
Oh, what was that like?
A lot of non-disclosure agreements.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, there's always a yin and yang to everything, and this is a wonderful opportunity for us to dial things in, and just it's nature all just telling you, hey, slow down. I remember this time I lost $500, and it just crippled me. This was when I was very young, and I remember just walking right into a job and just saying, look, I just lost $500, and I'm not going to be able to make rent. I don't know if I'm going to be able to eat. And I'm working 80 hours, sometimes 100 hours a week. And I'm like, and I feel if I'm working that hard and I'm coming home sweaty and smelly every day, I should be able to throw $500 away and not care. Since I can't do that, I quit. And so I quit that job. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be doing what I do now. And I think this is a good time to look at what we're doing, our business structure, our political structure, all these things, and just be like, how much is breaking down after just 2 weeks, right? And how much, and this is our own mind, body, and spirit, like our own spiritual structure, our own mental structure is like, how resilient were we if a week broke us, and then allow that breaking to where we can really unfold. And that's what a big theme of a lot of these talks are. Is I used to look up the roots of words a lot, and I had a lot of it all came from a weird getting my ass handed to me in Balderdash one day with some linguists, and I just realized I need to know the roots of words. And the apocalypse in biblical way, in the biblical sense, is the ending of the world. But in the root of the word, it means to reveal or to unfold. And I think that's really important when we have based so much of our social structure on sort of constructs that aren't that solid in nature, right? Like accounting, 1 + 1 is 2, yet there's a type of person that has figured out how to make 1 + 1 into 50,000 over the course of and it's like, and there is math behind that. But I think it's really important for us to invite this apocalypse and to invite the unfolding and the revealing of, like, what are we doing? Like, how many artists are in it for the party versus how many are in it for the work and for the cultivation? How many people are, how many of us got into social media and to actually communicate with people socially, and then how many people were just using it to become and it became crazy narcissists that just want attention, or you're just trying to start a race war with cat pictures. You know what I mean? It's like there's the other side of that. So I think this is an interesting time, and hopefully we have enough reserve to just sit back and let it all kind of settle.
Yeah. one of the elements of that is most interesting to me right now is the way that this has revealed a lot about the inner workings of our government,
Okay.
the inner workings of our like social support systems, and like I think a really interesting thing that has been highlighted in all of this that I feel like we don't think about quite as much when national politics dominates the news so much of the time, is what the limitations of our federal government are. Like how much is actually being handled at the state level, and how our sort of distributed system of governance in this country actually works when it comes to serving the needs of its citizens. I think that's, I think it's very easy for us to look at the federal government as this sort of monolithic umbrella structure that, that provides for all of us. When in reality, so much more happens at the state and local level than we are aware of. So I think that's really interesting. I'm hoping that one of the things this reveals to folks is that a focus on that for those who are interested in being involved in systemic actions which affects their immediate communities or otherwise, that a focus on the state and local level is actually in many ways more accessible and more impactful than action at the federal level, which is very different, I think, from how we think about this. I'm also really interested. I think there's another really interesting little piece here around civic engagement. That like one of the things that our sort of culture of individualism and our capitalist ethos in this country really kind of propels us to do collectively is to always be hustling, to always be getting after it, to always be, trying to climb the ladder of our career or social status or, material resources, whatever the thing is. And I think that collectively keeps our blinders on and keeps our hamster wheel going in like a very narrow track where we're just like, me and mine, gotta do the thing, wake up every day, turn it out. And it sort of prevents us from maintaining a broader awareness of the world around us, our neighbors, our locale. And I think that I think a lot of the impact of people not being able to work, not being able to be on the hamster wheel, and being in an environment where there are a lot of folks in need who are not being cared for sufficiently by either our federal or our state or our local governments and social support systems, is bringing about a lot of new awareness of how we can engage with each other to provide mutual aid and support when that support is not coming from other places. Like, I think there's just a really interesting level amidst all of the despair and grief and suffering that is, inherent in this situation. I think I'm also seeing lots of glimmers of awareness that like we actually do have the ability, and in many instances we have an obligation to be of service to the people around us, and that we have that it is incumbent upon us to create the change that we would like to see, and not just sit by and assume that our elected officials or our social systems are going to just do that. So that part is really interesting to me, because like I've been on this tip for a while with the Vulcan Project of just like, self-determination being the way to go. If you want to create it, if you want your life to look a certain way, if you want your life situation to look a certain way, you have to be the person who does it. You have to step up, and that takes sacrifice, and it sometimes sucks, but that's just how shit gets done sometimes. And I think a lot more people are getting on that train right now. And I'm really interested in what the implications of that are going to be, not only during this pandemic, but also after this pandemic. Like we have all these communities that are organizing and connecting now in ways they never have before. Those people are going to be in connection and communication after this too. And what's that going to do?
Yeah.
I'm really interested in the fact that we have a presidential election coming up. I'm really interested in the fact that we have all these gaps that have now been shown to exist, that are probably going to continue existing as gaps after this pandemic is done. And like, what are all of these groups of people going to do in response to that after the initial emergency situation is over? I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen there.
Yeah, I look at social constructs as a tool, just like we're both musicians. So there's always that person that, thinks if they get a better guitar, then they can play better. And there is a limit. You want a guitar that can stay in tune and things like that. We both roller skate. It's not your roller skates. It's your balance. And there's other things. You definitely want 4 rolling wheels and on each foot. However, there's a lot of, if I just had blank, then I could blank, right? And I feel this is a good moment to check in with our relationships with our tools, because our government in itself is a tool. It's a tool. I'm having a talk here in a minute with another buddy of mine who is the most free human being I've ever met, and he talks about that. It's like he's capable, he's intelligent, and he truly, truly, truly pursues freedom. And inside that freedom, we have to get into another side of I just had this conversation last night. There's a hyper-focused academic mind that says, do this thing, get good at this thing, and then there you go. And a lot of times parents or whoever can support you, whether it's a student loan or anything, and it can support you in order to where you can focus in on this thing.
Yeah.
But if you're free and you don't have a big community around you, you have to know how to do a lot more than that. And I've run into this thing where I've deemed myself almost unemployable in many states, because on a resume, I have a lot of skills that go on there that actually makes it look like I'm a relatively unfocused human being, because it'll be like, I have a degree in cooking, and then, music, and then there's, then there's the computer stuff, and then the martial arts stunts and the body work and all these things. And a lot of times it doesn't look like I've really focused on one thing, but it has been a lifelong pursuit. And I was talking to someone the other day about cooking should not be a skill that you really put on a resume. Like I studied cooking and I love cooking as an art, but everyone should know how to cook, because that's how you stay alive, right? Like if you don't know how to cook, like life's really weird. And if you don't know how to cook, you're less free than you think, because now when you can't leave the house, if you make a lot of money to where you can eat out every night, well, you're not free right now. And so I think this is a good time to reveal what our relationships are with our tools, like how many people are going to come out. I have a lot of hairstylist friends, and and I've had this conversation with about 5 people in the past 3 days. How many tools did it take for us to look the way that we do? You know what I mean? Like, all our hair is going to be weird. There's all these little things that we can see. Yeah, hopefully we can appreciate the people that serve us. You're not going to replace a hairstylist. And the joke my buddy said was, I'm not going to be the first person to try out the robot hairstylist, where it's like some robot with scissors just coming at, I mean, it's like, he's like, I'm not going to be the first person to try that. I'm not going to be that guinea pig. And I think this is a really great way to prioritize our tools. Really great way to prioritize who we're putting in this hierarchy, right? Because do we really care about the computer programmer more than the garbage collector, more than the nurse, more than the teacher? And since we didn't run into a problem like this where we actually needed ourselves, we started putting things, Gandhi said it, false idol worship, right? We started putting things on a hierarchy that doesn't need to be there. Like, we literally think like the person that made Twitter is more important than your garbage collector. Like, you can go a long time without Twitter. It's going to be hard to go a long time without your garbage being collected, right? And so that's really cool. So I think this is kind of a beautiful revealing of the ways that we use our tools and how much and how our technology, if it's not a tool, like this Zoom is great. I love cameras and all these things. It's a great way to communicate, right? But you're on your computer?
Yep, just on laptop.
And I'm just on another camera is probably better, but it doesn't matter. We're both saying the same, we're both communicating. And I think this is important about, you're way more entertaining than me. That's why I got to have my camera's like $50,000. I'm just kidding. But yeah. So, I mean, what are you doing? All right. So in this, you've made some music. Now you're sitting around and you're relaxing.
Yep.
Are there any questions that you ask yourself or you're asking other people in this, like to sort of get a beat on what you want to do or next steps, or just any questions that you're asking people or yourself?
One, now that I've come to sort of a stasis point of like, here's how I intend to do business for at least the next couple of months while I see how the next phase of this situation kind of shakes out.
Okay.
A big question that I have been asking other people, which has also been asked of me, is relates to something you mentioned earlier about your sort of like generalist resume, your broadly distributed skill sets. And specifically, and I have similar resume, same kind of deal. I've been in the same neighborhood, but I've lived in many different houses in that same neighborhood. And then, I've lived in some different neighborhoods too. Is a question I've been asking to people specifically in the performing and creative industries who have had their entire industry disappear overnight. Yeah. Which is, how do your what meta skills have you cultivated that in the various specific disciplines or skill sets that you operate in professionally that are still relevant to things other than the work that you used to be able to do before your industry disappeared?
Right.
Like where for those people who are trying to figure out how to generate income in a different way right now, that's a big question for me. Like, as you well know, being a self-employed person, who teaches martial arts for a living, also requires you to use a bunch of other skills, like we were talking about earlier, that ensure your ability to show up every day and train people in martial arts. There's all of the digital infrastructure. You have to get the word out about what you're doing. You have to be able to present yourself well on the internet and demonstrate your value to people who you want to come train. There's all of the back end infrastructure that you have to have in place to take care of admin and finances, all that shit. I know you've invested a lot in your video content production infrastructure over the last year. So the question has been like, what else can you do with that?
Yep.
And I think that, going back to something you said earlier, that question is particularly interesting to me because it reveals a lot that we are not accustomed to thinking about.
Yep.
Like, it's so, especially for folks in my community, in my industry, it takes such a heroic effort on so many fronts to get to the point where you could, make even a decent middle class wage as a performing artist, that people don't think, or they don't have time or even reason to think more broadly about where else their skills could be applied.
Well, I had a talk with these coal miners last year. I was out in West Virginia hanging out, and what was going on was it's hard to communicate to this people, because I always say we don't really care that much about, people care about jobs lost, right? But what happens is if we only care about the jobs lost if there's not a replacement for what it's like, because no one gave a shit when Blockbuster closed, because they all had Netflix accounts anyway, and they weren't. So jobs lost of industries we no longer support, no one really cares. And that being said, what is the lateral move? And I was talking to these coal miners, and these coal miners were doubling down on, because what people may not know is there are towns in West Virginia that just stopped. The only reason why you would go into that area is for the coal mine, and then when it stopped, and then most people are like, well, I don't care, because I don't care, I don't like coal, and these people are obviously the devil, right? And if you were to shut down the oil industry, people would be like, good, and I'm always, therefore it's going to create a doubling down and a tribalism of people that are in the coal industry, and they're going to come up with terms like clean coal and all these other bullshit terms, and they're going to double down on their desires for coal. And I was talking to them, and I was like, well, hey, you guys understand workflow and engineering. You can bore to the center of the earth, and you can flatten a mountain in no time. So you obviously know how to do stuff, and construction, building, and how to create energy. There's all of these lateral skills that we can go. So instead of like doubling down on, it's all about coal, it's hopefully other industries can start looking at coal miners, can start looking at performers and saying, okay, there's a huge workforce that is available to us right now.
Yep.
And hopefully we can see these people for not, how to make a coal mine, but how to project manage, how to, you have good communication skills. Like, I don't think people take into consideration a guy like you that is managing their own schedule and dealing with customer service and setting up all these other things, and there's sales in what you do there. And then not only that, performers show up, and that's the thing. Like, I rarely ever hear performers call in sick to their show. Like, I've watched dancers roll their ankle the first 4 count and do 12 shows that week on that ankle, and you're just like, man, you guys show
I've done
up.
it.
Yeah.
I've done it. I've performed hurt. I've performed sick. I've performed, while in, very early stages of grieving the loss of people very close to me.
Yep.
All of it. And I think one of the benefits of being a generalist and avoiding the sort of the market's larger push towards specialization, or resisting it as much as possible and keeping a diversified skill set, is that it makes transitions like this a lot easier to think about.
Yeah.
And a lot easier to weather. And I think it makes it easier. I think it makes it easier too to gradually crossfade into something different.
Yeah.
I have a mentor who says, I do not in the value of butt joints in life. In
Yeah.
life, I believe in the value of crossfades always.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so like a friend of mine asked me this really early on. He was like, what are you going to do when you run out of money? What are you going to do if you don't collect unemployment? And I told him, I was like, part of why I decided to do all of this proactive work to grow my business is not because I want to be a professional action adventure children's entertainer until I'm 60. I can't. It was to build transferable skills, and sort of do my own and do an MBA for myself where I get paid to learn rather than having to pay to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, so as a result, like I now have management experience that I've been paid to acquire. My flow for copywriting is organic now. I could just show up and write copy for 3 hours a day because that's what I've been doing for the last year. I can think about things like flow charts and building databases. I have project management experience now. I've learned a lot about persuasive sales and marketing techniques. I can think broadly about how all of the big pieces of a large project come together to create, a unified whole. And these are all transferable to a wide number of industries, all over the place. So for me, a lot of the switching between industries I've done has been about cultivating these meta skills that allow me to be successful wherever I go and allow me to be flexible and adaptable and change as the environment around me changes and my life situation changes. And I really feel for people who have not even been, who are not even aware that this is an option that you can select. We live in a world that pushes you into specialization. And especially if you're taking the kind of, sort of predefined academic paths that you were talking about before, it's really easy, I think, to sort of have your blinders on and get locked into a mindset that there are, that in order to be successful, you have to follow a prescribed track, that there's a fixed target out there in the world that you need to hit. And the only way to get there is by doing what everybody else has done to get there. Whereas like, I would imagine for you, as with me, there are some general practices that when cultivated allow you to transition between industries and hustles and gigs, with a degree of seamlessness that allows sort of forced transition points like this to feel a little bit less daunting. Like there's just some general stuff. Like if nothing happens in your career until something gets sold. Nothing gets sold until people know that it exists. People don't buy it unless they see what's in it for them.
Yeah.
And, and people don't continue buying unless you serve them in a certain way and keep yourself top of mind. And like, these are all general skill sets that apply to any sort of, self-employed hustle I've ever done. And and so I feel fairly comfortable having cultivated some of these skills that if after several months of this, it looks like the entertainment industry is not coming back until, I don't know, this time next year, and I really do need to start thinking more proactively about how I'm going to, pivot or transition what my cash flow is going to be. It feels much easier for me to think about what other things I might do, because there's now a broad variety of skills I can draw from that I can either use for my own projects or in service of other people that, that transfer across multiple industries and, and even transfer between, like in-person service type work and remote online work.
Yeah, in fighting, there's this moment where, again, if I can keep you on the defense and you can keep trying to put out fires, you're in this reactionary state. But there's this other side of it called the survival loop and survivalism. And when you get into that survival mind, you get so selfish and just wrapped up in your own survival. And this time, luckily, we're going to be here for a while, and it's going to be this like boring thing where people are slowly going, as long as they can not look at it as just a financial move, as survival, right? And it's why you don't swim up to a drowning person unless you're highly trained, because they're going to drown you to stay afloat. And when I was a kid, I didn't have any money, but I needed to make money. And so I had a mentor of mine tell me that it's not money, it's currency, and there's time, energy, and money. And so now we have time, and that time is going to give us energy. And then as performers, our only value is, can we bring value into a situation? And so I think this is a good time to create more value in ourselves and value ourselves more, because we can see people right now just using a new form of currency right now is attention, right? We want eyeballs on us. And there's so many people just devaluing their art in order to just have attention, like don't forget about me kind of thing. And musicians, we did this in the 90s and the early 2000s, because no one was selling records anymore. So we just started, I mean, it's been happening forever, just playing shows for free for exposure, mm-hmm. and that never works. And now we're just, it's like, what are we doing for just to expose ourselves, to get attention and stuff like that, versus how do we just give a gift and truly, truly, truly give something that we own. And you can only give what you own. And the only way you can buy skill is through practice. So that's time and energy. And those are the questions I think we need to start asking, is what do we own? And that thing that we own is what we can give. And I think that's important.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, and I feel like there's an opportunity here for people to take stock too, and just be like, what do I have available? Even if I'm not, right. Even if it's not necessarily the main thing that I do or something that has immediate application, like what resources are at my disposal right now? Mm-hmm. And are there ways I could think more flexibly about how to apply those things?
What would you want to happen right now in perfect world? Perfect world, let's manifest this. Okay, we're manifesting.
All right.
You get in the mindset, like this happens, and not even this, like just say you wake up today and you say, the perfect world needs to happen. What would it be? Give or take someone just throwing you the keys to a jet ski and saying you never have to work again. Perfect world, go. What would you want to
world? Oh boy, I would like to front a classic R&B band.
All right.
If I could be in like a Motown cover band and have all my basic and future needs met to a sufficient level.
Okay.
That'd be great, man. I'd just tear up Marvin Gaye all day.
Okay, so all right, so you just manifested that. And all right, so that being said, then in that creating of your perfect world, because you already have ways to market yourself, you already have an online platform. So 3 steps to fulfill your dream. What are they?
I mean, it's usually for me reverse engineering. Like I close my eyes and I imagine the show. What does it look like? I'm on stage. There are musicians on stage. We are playing music. So the first question would be like, what's the repertoire?
Mm-hmm.
What are the tunes for my Motown cover band that I would want to do?
Yeah.
Second question would be, who are the musicians that I need to do that? What instrumentation do I need to cover? What kind of skills and chops do they need to have? What are the, some of the, more abstract things that I need? Like, I need a drummer with a certain feel, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that kind of, I need someone who can like lay back in a pocket, who's not flashy, but has a great groove in a deep pocket.
Yeah.
So who are those people? And then, from there, I think the question would be like, how do I, let's say I've now figured out my tunes. I've rehearsed them with myself. I've rehearsed them with my band. Now I need to figure out who wants a Motown cover band. Where's the gig? Where can we do our thing? And so there's some research on that, figure out what, how am I going to be able to pay all these musicians? Like a Motown cover band is a stretch goal for me because they usually had a lot of people on stage. It's not a power trio, You gotta have a horn section. You gotta have 3 backup vocalists. Oftentimes there's multiple percussionists, so it's not unthinkable, for a lot of those classic recordings, it's pretty common to have 10 or 12 people making music. And that's an expensive, expensive live proposition. So like, where's the gig that's going to allow me to pay all those musicians and keep them happy working with me? Mm-hmm. And then as soon as those things are figured out, I just apply the marketing and digital entrepreneurship stuff and, put together a website that's targeted towards those particular clients, that particular market, speaks to what it is that they want. Set my pricing structure accordingly so that all the musicians and myself get paid. Just do music as I've always done it. Set up rehearsals, figure out a plan, keep everyone on task, keep forward momentum, be efficient, keep the vibe happy. That would be it for me.
Oh, I love it. I love
it.
What
about you?
Me? I'm going to put out in a perfect world, I'm editing the last online course that I need to put out for the next year or so. If you can get good and proficient at what I've put up online in a year, you're a liar. And so therefore I'm really, really, really stoked about that. And then in a perfect world, that would generate all the money that I need. And then I could just give to people. I can travel around. I can do storytelling, and I can help people film things, help other people do stuff like this. And I'm a teacher by nature. I think I just naturally just tend to know that form of communication. It comes. I don't want to say I know it, but I enjoy learning about it. Like I have an infinite amount of levity behind the rigors that go into learning it. Mm-hmm. And so I would do stuff like that. I would go on a lot of motorcycle rides. I'd camp a lot more. I would go, basically Total BS Wellness it's already starting to take care of me. And therefore I can do the in-person stuff because I have clients now all over the world.
Really? And it's already taken off that much. That's great.
Yeah. And I'm just, and I've worked with so many people all over the world. So it's really nice to be able to share things with them. And I would just honestly, in a perfect world, I would be doing this. It's kind of weird. I would play more music, but yeah, at the end of all this, Total BS Wellness should be killing it. And I would hope to be able to watch people using a lot of this work to get better at other things. Because I teach martial arts as a way of looking at the world and as a lens to view life, not as a system of fighting, because that's just part of it. And
Yeah.
we all say that, but it's another thing to do it. Like right now we're challenged, and I think we need people that are used to the stresses of fighting and stuff like that in order to come out and make conscious decisions. And that's what martial arts is. So working with people on, yeah, exactly. I mean, basically I would be doing exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm loving all the online stuff. I love the fact that I have the time to do it right now. And but I live above 2 dojos, and I mean, I'm I've worked really hard to have this level of freedom and this level of relaxed time when things go horribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'm doing it. I would still be pushing total BS. There's nothing that I do right now that wasn't a lifelong dream.
Yeah.
So I'm doing it. So I sound like a douche for saying that, but I'm also extremely grateful that I can say things that make me feel like a douche. That's a pretty cool thing. Yeah, but other than that, make a lot of music. Yeah, I don't make enough music right now. I don't play enough music with the people that I play music with my soulmates, and they're, hanging with their kids and making sure their families are safe, and that's good. And Uncle Matt just has to, I could be bringing well, actually, it's kids that are going to bring the germs. It's rarely me. I've been isolated for a long time, but yeah. But I want to keep checking in with you. I mean, you and we got to have a roller skate session anyway, but
No doubt. Well, and we live 10 minutes down the street from each
yeah,
other,
we're neighbors. And yeah, it's good to hear that you can take this time off and enjoy it.
I mean, similar to you, there's a lot of time and energy that has gone into having a flexible work situation and low overhead and low material needs, and the cultivation of a self-directed lifestyle where I'm only beholden to myself for my own.
Are there any struggles, like, out of all the people that, I mean, you live with 200 other artists, and every artist in town, and you guys are so active in the scene. Have you heard from anyone like, okay, because I've heard a ton of people, we'll call them regrets for lack of a better term, but in a situation like this, are there people going, oh shit, I wish I should have, other than save money, than just save money? Like what are some of the things that people have said?
The biggest one that I'm hearing for the performing artists right now is, I wish I had invested more in building infrastructure that allowed me to generate gigs on my own rather than through agents.
Okay. Yeah.
When AB5, the gig work law in California, came down, a whole lot of people, hang on a second, I just lost that. A whole lot of people that I know lost a ton of people who were like gigging often, doing a lot of corporate stuff, lost most of their work overnight because the agents they were working for were now being forced to classify them as employees, and that would have tanked their entire business model.
Yeah.
So that sector of the market shut down. A lot of those people were already hurting. I mean, this is kind of the insult to injury part of this situation, is that like a significant this gig work law shut down a significant sector of the industry at the beginning of the year, and then 2 months later, the industry disappeared altogether. And so a lot of these people, like maybe they have stilt walking skills or face painting skills or juggling skills or whatever, unicycling skills, that they used to be able to go and do for corporate events through agents, and they had enough agents that were bringing in enough work. And now, but they didn't have websites, they didn't have booking systems, they didn't have outbound marketing stuff in place that allowed them to, go and seek out clients, either in person or remotely, nor had they cultivated the kinds of meta skills which are required to build that sort of infrastructure in the first place. And now a lot of these people are just completely out of work and have no idea what to do, because they were focused solely on just their technical skill, and had been able to exist for a long time, believing that work was just going to come to them from other people, and that just being good at the technical skill was enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's become very clear for a lot of people that just being good enough at your technical skill is insufficient.
Yep.
And so that's the big one. That's
Mm-hmm.
the big one. And I think that's a lot of why, as someone who's taken a different approach and is kind of bummed out to see so many folks in my community suffering as a result of this situation, I think that's a big part of why I've been asking this question about meta skills to a lot of my performer friends, to start jogging the brain cells a little bit, to get people thinking about what they do as performers, as artists, as creatives, from a different mindset.
Yeah.
That is based more on flexibility and resilience, and sort of a broader sense of awareness of the full scope of activities that can exist under this umbrella, other than just I paint faces or I can juggle
Right.
5 clubs.
So in technology, since it's such a technology-based culture, I had a teacher a long time ago talk to me about looking at your art as technology. And because a lot of times as a martial artist, if we're not always adapting and we're not always kind of upping our game, I mean, that's the fun part about, if you look at MMA, when it first started, no one knew what grappling was. Grapplers were ruling it. And then over time, people started realizing, you just got to have good grappling. And so so now strikers are kicking ass, and now people are landing crazy kicks. And I mean, now it's just it's like technology. It moves fast, so fast, as long as it's not insulated in its bubble. Mm-hmm. And I think as artists, we need to take a page out of the playbook of technology. There's a reason why technology is so influential, and there's a reason why it moves so quickly, is because they understand minimum viable product.
Yep.
They get it out there, they start testing it, and then they also understand that a lot of it is sales and marketing. And what happens to a lot of us artists is we find the piece and the hiding place that is our hard work. And so we will just sit in the studio all day. You could be the best. How many musicians do you know that are like the best musician in the world, and they're never going to play a gig? And and then there's the other people that are just out there, and that's super important to understand. Like, I've hired out and let go, I think, 6 companies to try to help me with my tech needs. And what I learned was they're really good at doing what they need to do. They didn't have enough broad skills to actually do what I needed them to do, like, because I only had the money to hire one person.
Yep.
And so I needed someone that was more of a generalist, and I was getting a web designer, but come to find out they were just in charge of designing the button that went on the thing. And it wasn't, they weren't as specialized as I needed. So, and I didn't have the money to hire the people that I really wanted to hire. So it's my fault just as much. However, in this new time, I think it's a good moment for us to take a playbook from the fact that technology is going to adapt super fast to whatever. And us as artists, like, how can we adapt and find that minimum viable product and then get it out there, start testing it? Like, how many people do you know were just good enough at the bass, they got in the band, and now after 2 tours, they're just crushing it? And I mean, I know
absolutely
that's happened to me. And so I really feel that this is a great moment for us to just stop and say, okay, it's time to put yourself out online, because it's the 1,000 people, like,
right. Okay. 1,000 true fans,
1,000 true fans. Like, and this is our time to just sort of dial in. What can we give that we own that invites people into our story. And I think that's important.
Absolutely.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Something is happening outside.
Yeah. That's weird.
Zombies coming to your door yet?
You never know with this place.
Yeah.
There's plenty of those walking around, but yeah, okay, so I'm gonna rush out of here.
Sounds good, man.
I have to do another conversation with a guy who is, man, you're gonna love this guy. But
Looking forward to it.
I know some of the most free people in the world, and you're one of those people. And let's keep checking in, and let's go roller skating. The weather right now is so good.
I know.
You getting out? Are you?
Yeah, dude, I'm on my bike at least every other day.
Okay. Good.
That's like alternating conditioning and cardio. So
okay,
it's been going good.
All right. Anything left to say? Anything that you would like to say to whoever listens to this stuff?
Think broadly about what you can do during this time. Where are there meta skills that you have been using in the to support the application of a technical skill you might have that could transfer somewhere else, either for the generation of income or revenue, or for something else to keep you engaged with your community or yourself or your family during this weird time.
How do you feel like, out of all the meta skills that you've learned, okay, so let's put aside the performing, let's put aside the music, let's put all that. What are the skills that you actually use most? Because I know I don't really use, martial arts and music, that's what I do for a living. So I actually don't really feel like I use those ever, because those are more natural to me. But what are the quote meta skills that you use the most?
I've touched on some of them before. I think especially when it comes to career stuff, especially if you're trying to do your own thing, basic sales, marketing, and persuasion skills are really key. You know, like what do I have to offer? What are the benefits that thing provides? Who are the people out there that this solves a problem for? Where are they? How do I get to them? How do I persuade them that the thing that I have is of sufficient value that they will part with their money in order to get it?
Yep.
I think that's pretty basic stuff. But then also, like, a big one for me over the past year and a half with growing my business and also doing this effort to save the Vulcan, this whole crowdfunding campaign we did, has been building and managing teams. Managing teams. Project management also is a really big one. Just like how do you reverse, and if you have a vision of what things need to look like for your big idea, how do you reverse engineer that and break it down into discrete steps that allow you to incrementally move forward towards a large goal?
Yeah.
I think that stuff is over the. And then I think the last big one would be just the awareness that my life experience has led me to cultivate around the attitude necessary to manifest your own reality. You know, the attitude of waking up every day saying, I would like things to be this way. What could I do to make that happen, rather than waiting for someone to hand it to me?
Yep.
What's something I could do today that will get me one step closer to where I would like to be?
Yep. Baby steps. Awesome, man. Dude.
Always a pleasure.
Good to see you. And
man.
I will see you sooner than later. We will get together. You and I will be 6 feet apart partying. Very soon.
Partying on our quads.
Yeah.
In a tennis court in North Berkeley.
Yeah. Awesome, man. All right. See you,
man. Peace out.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to that, and I hope you enjoyed it. That was Andrew. He's a resilient man. Stay tuned for my next talk with Gary Rosenberg. He's a guy that started like an urban homestead in Berkeley, and then next thing you know, it escalated to a completely regenerative home that escalated to a 37-acre school where he teaches people how to live completely, not even sustainable, but regenerative in Hawaii. And if you want a man that's free, stay tuned for my talk with Gary. Remember to sign up at Total BS Wellness. Follow me on Instagram or YouTube, whatever you want to do. It's not just about attention, it's about engagement. So again, Total BS Wellness stands for Total Balancing Sequence, but it's also the fact if you don't show up and practice, this is all BS. So it's thoughts, words, and actions.